Little more than a year ago, the discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves in Canada brought global attention to the horrors of what was known as the Indian residential schools, really on both sides of the border.
Indigenous children taken from their families and sent to institutions where they were stripped of their traditions as an attempt to assimilate them. Most were abused, many died. And as Daybreak's Pete Galvin tells us, today is Orange Shirt Day, a day to remember.
Every child matters. A message not only on these T-shirts, but also in these hearts. Sue Chandro of the Tuscarora Nation is the daughter of a residential school survivor.
It was never really talked about or discussed in the history books. And a lot of our people never talked about it because they were so damaged from the trauma that they faced at the school, they didn't want to remember it.
Orange Shirt Day is set aside to acknowledge what happened, along with the generational trauma that's been left in the wake of the Indian residential school programs in the United States and Canada.
Because you have people who have no knowledge of it. When my granddaughter was in 9th grade, she brought it up in her history class, and her history teacher told her, well, there's nothing in the history book, so I can't agree with that.
By 1926, in the United States, more than 80% of school-aged Native American children were taken from their families and put into boarding schools. Physical and sexual abuse were commonplace.
My nation has almost lost our language because our people didn't want to speak it. My mother didn't want to speak it. She went to Thomas Indian School, and it was beat out of her.
Now the concept of remembering every child is catching on both sides of the border. Orange Shirt Day is being marked in the Niagara-Wheatfield schools, and on the Seneca Nation, they'll be holding a remembering and healing event along with a walk around the grounds of the former Thomas School. Sue says it all begins with communication.
Different people say, well, how can I help the people? I said, just, acknowledge it.
Communication that leads toward healing. Pete Galvin, Channel 2 News Daybreak.
Interesting story from Pete there. And the federal government launched an investigation a year ago into the program, confirming in part that the system deployed militarized and identity alternating methods.
And it also outlined the next steps, including documentation of burial grounds here in the United States.